You're expelled. Ethan Walker sat frozen, fingers gripping the chair arms. I'm the top student. I have a guaranteed spot at Harvard. You must be joking. Headmaster Richardson sighed dramatically, but the smugness in his eyes was unmistakable. Your scholarship has been revoked. Without tuition, we can't keep you enrolled. Lies. Ethan knew the real reason. They needed his place for Chris Harrington, the son of a billionaire who funded half the school. Hillsworth Academy had never been about merit. It was a playground for the rich. Kicked out like a criminal, Ethan went home expecting his parents to panic. Instead, they shrugged. Then his father tossed a massive key ring into his lap. Time for you to start collecting rent. Ethan stared at the dozens of keys to properties owned by his family. We own real estate? His father flipped through TV channels, unfazed. How do you think we pay the bills? For years, Ethan believed they were poor. But the truth? He was the heir to a real estate empire, and now his life was about to change forever. Ethan Walker was now living two lives. By day, he was a delivery guy, carrying takeout orders in a battered thermal bag, weaving through traffic and making barely enough in tips to justify the effort. By night, he was a landlord, collecting rent from properties worth millions, managing finances, and slowly stepping into the world of real estate. It was a strange balance. Most people, given the revelation that they were secretly heirs to a vast fortune, would have quit their part-time job immediately. But Ethan wasn't most people. His parents had raised him to be self-sufficient, to work for his own money even when there was more than enough wealth to last a lifetime. Besides, he enjoyed the anonymity of being just another worker. It gave him insight. It showed him how people truly acted when they didn't know who you were. And tonight, he was about to get a perfect example of that. It was just supposed to be a normal delivery run. Ethan had a takeout order for apartment 1902, a penthouse suite in Sterling Towers, one of the luxury high-rises his family owned. The kind of place where the rent alone was more than most people's yearly salary. He pulled up to the entrance, adjusting his cap and grabbing the bag. As he approached the glass doors, the concierge barely spared him a glance, already assuming he was just another low-wage worker. Deliveries use the side entrance, the man muttered, waving him toward a dimly lit alley that led to the back door service entrance. Ethan paused, raising an eyebrow. He could already see the contrast in treatment. Wealthy tenants walked through the front doors with smiles and greetings, while delivery drivers were sent to the back like they were second-class citizens. Still, he said nothing and simply followed instructions, stepping into the cramped back hallway. It wasn't the first time he had been dismissed because of how he looked, and it wouldn't be the last. Ethan navigated his way to the service elevator, only to find a uniformed security guard standing in front of it. The guard barely looked up from his phone before holding out a hand to stop him. "This one's broken," he said flatly. "Use the stairs." Ethan's eyes flicked to the small sign taped to the elevator, "Out of order." He glanced over his shoulder at the main lobby, where he could see the luxury glass elevators going up and down without issue, and something in him just snapped. He had spent years being pushed around, overlooked, and underestimated. Not because he was weak, but because people assumed he was. And frankly, he was done playing along. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black key fob, the kind only building owners and high-level staff had access to. He raised it to the elevator panel and tapped it against the sensor. Ding. The elevator doors immediately slid open. The guard's smug expression vanished. Ethan stepped inside and turned, watching as the man's face drained of color. The concierge in the lobby noticed too, eyes widening as he realized what was happening. A few tenants dressed in expensive designer brands turned to stare. Ethan let the silence drag out before speaking. "I'm not a delivery guy," he said casually, tucking the key fob back into his pocket. "I'm the owner of this building. The reaction was instant. The guard stammered, his confidence shattering into pieces. The concierge practically choked on air, suddenly looking deeply uncomfortable. And the tenants? They started whispering. Did he just say he owns the building? Wait, isn't that the delivery guy from earlier? No way, that's impossible. He's just some worker, right? The realization that the lowly delivery guy was actually their landlord sent a ripple of panic through the room. Ethan said nothing else. He simply let the elevator doors close, leaving them in stunned silence. But the damage had been done. By morning, everyone in the building would know his name. The next day, the whispers turned into full-blown gossip. Sterling Towers had over 100 tenants, and every single one of them was talking about the incident. People who had ignored or looked down on him before now treated him with nervous smiles and polite greetings. The same security guard who had blocked him at the elevator now held the door open for him every time he walked in. The concierge? He started offering him coffee and personally escorting him to the upper floors. The shift in behavior was so drastic, it was almost comical. Ethan played along, watching the hypocrisy unfold. Money didn't just change how you lived, it changed how people treated you. And for the first time, he was starting to enjoy the game. That afternoon, Ethan received an invitation to a private tenant meeting. A few of the wealthiest residents, business owners, socialites, and minor celebrities wanted to meet him. Or rather, they wanted to test him. The meeting was held in the building's exclusive rooftop lounge, a place Ethan had never even bothered stepping into before. As he walked in, the room went silent. A woman in an expensive red dress, Mrs. Carter, looked him up and down, her smile too polished to be sincere. "Mr. Walker," she said smoothly, "we were surprised to learn that you're the new landlord." Ethan smiled back. "Were you?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "We assumed the owner would be more experienced," she said, choosing her words carefully. Translation: "You don't belong in our world." Ethan just chuckled. "And yet, here I am." She didn't like that answer. The meeting continued, with different tenants covertly testing him, throwing out questions about building regulations, property values, and high-class investments. They wanted to see if he was just a rich kid playing landlord. But what they didn't realize was Ethan had spent the last few weeks learning everything there was to know about real estate. By the time the meeting ended, the tension in the room was thick. They had tried to belittle him, but instead they realized he wasn't just some kid with money. He was a problem. As Ethan left the meeting, he saw Mrs. Carter watching him carefully. There was no more fake politeness, no more subtle insults, just quiet, simmering unease. And Ethan? He smiled, because for the first time he wasn't just playing defense, he was playing the game on his own terms. And this was just the beginning. Ethan Walker had learned a valuable lesson. Money doesn't change who you are, it changes how people see you. A week ago, he was just a delivery boy, someone people could ignore, dismiss, or look down on. Now he was their landlord, and suddenly the people who once treated him like dirt were tripping over themselves to stay on his good side. No one embodied this change more than Mrs. Carter. Mrs. Catherine Carter was one of the wealthiest and most arrogant tenants in Sterling Towers. She was the kind of woman who sized people up in a single glance, and if you weren't useful to her, you didn't exist. Ethan had seen plenty of people like her growing up. Rich, pretentious, always acting like they owned the world when in reality they were just good at pretending. He had delivered food to her apartment twice before his identity was revealed. Both times, she had barely acknowledged him. One time she had even rolled her eyes and sighed impatiently as she snatched the food out of his hands, muttering about how slow delivery workers were these days. But now it was Ethan knocking on her door. And this time, it wasn't for a food delivery, it was to collect rent. The moment Mrs. Carter opened the door and saw Ethan standing there, her entire body tensed. Her eyes flickered to the clipboard in his hands. her rent notice. Her fake smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Walker," she said, her voice too sweet, too forced. "What a surprise. What brings you here?" Ethan didn't return the smile. "Rent is due, Mrs. Carter." The color drained from her face. Yes, well, about that." She laughed nervously, tucking her expensive silk robe tighter around herself. "There's been a little issue with my finances recently. I was hoping we could delay the payment just for a little while." Ethan tilted his head, pretending to think. "That's funny," he mused. "I recall seeing you at the Grand Plaza auction last night, bidding on a $50,000 diamond necklace." Mrs. Carter flinched. Ethan didn't even go to the auction, but he had people who reported everything to him. People always talked. And he had learned to listen. Well, you see, that was a personal expense," Ethan finished for her. "But rent isn't personal, Mrs. Carter, it's business." Her desperation grew. "Ethan, darling, it's Mr. Walker to you." His voice was calm but cold. Her smile faltered completely. She had no power here, and she knew it. Mrs. Carter had spent years treating people like Ethan as if they were beneath her. Now she was standing in her own doorway, begging him for an extension. And the best part? Ethan didn't have to do anything. He just stood there and watched as she slowly crumbled under her own arrogance. "I just need a little more time," she pleaded. "A week, maybe 2. "Late payments come with fees, Mrs. Carter," Ethan cut in smoothly. Of course," she rushed to say. "I'll pay extra, just don't evict me." Ethan said nothing for a moment. He just let the silence drag out, let her feel the weight of her own helplessness. Then, finally, "You have 3 days," he said flatly. "No more extensions after that." Mrs. Carter nodded so fast it looked painful. "Thank you, Mr. Walker. Thank you so much." Ethan simply turned and walked away. He didn't need to threaten her. He didn't need to remind her who was in control now. She already knew. And that was enough. By the next morning, word had gotten out. The residents of Sterling Towers whispered among themselves, exchanging nervous glances whenever Ethan passed by. Because if someone like Mrs. Carter, who had always walked around like she owned the place, was reduced to begging, then no one was safe. Some tenants suddenly became extremely polite to Ethan, greeting him like he was their best friend. Others simply avoided eye contact, too embarrassed by the way they had treated him before. Either way, the message was clear. The days of them looking down on him were over. Ethan Walker wasn't just a landlord, he was the new king of Sterling Towers, and they were starting to realize it. Ethan Walker had changed. He wasn't the same naive scholarship kid who had been kicked out of Hillsworth Academy. He wasn't the boy who had been robbed of his Harvard spot, tossed aside for someone more privileged. No, now he was a millionaire, a landlord, and someone who held real power. And today, he was going to make sure everyone knew it. It started with a phone call. Ethan had just finished reviewing property contracts when an email from Hillsworth Academy landed in his inbox. Subject: an invitation to speak at our annual alumni event. He almost laughed. The same school that had thrown him away now wanted him to return as an honored guest? How ironic. But then, as he scrolled down, something caught his eye. A list of honored guests. And one name stood out. Christopher Harrington, Harvard Law School candidate. The name hit him like a punch to the gut. Chris Harrington, the same kid who had taken his Harvard spot, the same kid whose father's money had bought him everything Ethan had earned through hard work. Ethan's jaw clenched. Suddenly, the wounds from that day felt fresh again. The humiliation, the rage, the betrayal. But this time, Ethan wasn't helpless. This time, he wasn't going to let it slide. He picked up his phone, dialed a number, and called in a favor. 2 weeks later, Ethan walked through the grand entrance of Hillsworth Academy, the very place that had once treated him like a disposable inconvenience. Students and teachers whispered as he passed. Some recognized him. Others only saw a sharply dressed young man, exuding confidence, power, and wealth. The school had prepared a massive event for its alumni, a celebration of its legacy of excellence. And in the center of it all was Headmaster Richardson, the man who had stolen Ethan's future and handed it to someone else, the man who now stood at the podium, beaming as he welcomed the audience. And now we have the great honor of introducing one of our most distinguished alumni, Ethan Walker. The crowd clapped politely as Ethan took the stage. He adjusted the microphone, looked out at the audience, then, with a slow, deliberate smile, he set the school on fire. "It's an honor to be here today," Ethan began. "When I was a student, Hillsworth Academy taught me valuable lessons." He paused, like how hard work and merit don't matter when money is involved. A ripple of confusion spread through the audience. The headmaster's smile stiffened. But Ethan wasn't done. "I was once the top student here. I earned a direct admission to Harvard. But what happened?" His gaze flicked to Chris Harrington, sitting smugly in the front row. "My offer was mysteriously revoked, and Harvard suddenly had an open spot for someone else." Chris's face drained of color. The audience started murmuring. Ethan turned to Headmaster Richardson, whose expression had gone from fake confidence to sheer panic. "Tell me, sir," Ethan said coolly, "do you remember how that happened?" The room fell silent. The headmaster fumbled for words. "That's not true?" Ethan cut him off, pulling out printed documents from his jacket. "Then why do I have emails between you and the Harrington family discussing how to remove my name from the Harvard list?" Gasps. Chris sank in his chair, sweating bullets. The headmaster looked like he was about to pass out. The students? They were recording everything. Ethan could already see it. By the end of the day, this scandal would be all over social media. "I guess Hillsworth Academy really does prepare students for the real world," Ethan said smoothly, "because this was one hell of a business deal." The audience erupted. Half in shock, half in outrage, Headmaster Richardson staggered back, looking like his entire career was flashing before his eyes. And Chris bolted for the exit, but not before someone threw a drink at him. It was beautiful. And just like that, Ethan had destroyed the very institution that had betrayed him. Ethan stepped off the stage, feeling the weight of years of anger finally lift. The Hillsworth Academy name was ruined. The headmaster? Finished. Chris? He might have gotten into Harvard, but now his name was linked to academic fraud. And Ethan? Ethan had already moved on. As he walked past the crumbling remains of his past, he knew one thing for sure. He was no longer just the kid who got screwed over. He was the one pulling the strings now. And this was just the beginning. Ethan Walker had spent years dreaming of Harvard. It had been the ultimate goal, the golden ticket to a better future. And now Harvard was begging him to enroll. But the world had changed. He had changed. And for the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't sure if Harvard was worth it anymore. Because when you're a self-made millionaire, did you really need a degree? The acceptance letter from Harvard arrived in a sleek, gold-embossed envelope. A formal apology from the admissions office was attached, stating that due to a processing error, Ethan's initial offer had been mistakenly withdrawn. Bullshit. The only reason they wanted him now was because he had become someone important. The scandal at Hillsworth Academy had gone viral, exposing the corruption behind Ethan's stolen admission. And now, Harvard was trying to save face. Ethan wasn't surprised. But what did surprise him? Harvard wasn't the only one knocking on his door. Within days, Ethan's inbox was flooded with offers. MIT, we would love to have you join our artificial intelligence research program. Full scholarship, no application needed. Stanford, your entrepreneurial mindset is exactly what we cultivate. We'll match any offer Harvard gives you. Silicon Valley tech giants. Forget school. Come work for us. We'll pay you 7 figures to start. It wasn't just universities fighting for him. It was billion-dollar corporations. Facebook, Google, Tesla. Even defense contractors were trying to recruit him before he could accept Harvard's offer. The media picked up on it instantly. And soon, what should have been a private decision turned into a national spectacle. One evening, Ethan found himself sitting on a talk show panel, facing off against representatives from Harvard, MIT, and multiple Fortune 500 companies. Millions of people were watching live. The host leaned forward, smiling. "Ethan, you're in an incredibly unique position. You could attend the most prestigious universities in the world, or skip college entirely and go straight into a seven-figure job. What are you thinking right now?" Ethan smirked. "I'm thinking this is a really fun job interview." The audience laughed, but the Harvard rep didn't. "Mr. Walker," the Harvard representative interrupted, forcing a smile, "an education from Harvard is a lifelong asset. It opens doors that money can't buy." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I don't know," he mused. "It seems like money is opening a lot of doors right now." More laughter. The rep's smile tightened. Then the MIT recruiter jumped in. "Ethan, Harvard teaches theory. MIT teaches innovation. If you truly want to change the world, you belong with us." A Google executive cut in immediately. Or he could skip theory and innovation altogether and start working on real-world tech today. The debate spiraled into chaos. Every institution and company wanted a piece of Ethan Walker. And Ethan, he just sat back and enjoyed the show. Because for the first time, he wasn't the one begging for a chance. They were begging for him. The world waited. Social media exploded with speculation. "He'll pick Harvard. It's still the best. No way, MIT is the smarter choice. He's skipping college. Bet on it." Everyone had an opinion. Everyone thought they knew what he would do. But when Ethan finally made his decision, the world was shocked because he chose none of them. Instead of enrolling in Harvard or taking a corporate job, Ethan made a different announcement. "I appreciate the offers, truly, but I've decided to bet on myself. I'm starting my own company." The audience erupted. Harvard, MIT, and the tech giants had spent weeks fighting over him. And in the end, he walked away from all of them. Because Ethan Walker wasn't going to work for someone else's empire. He was going to build his own. Ethan Walker had just made the boldest move of his life. While the world had expected him to choose Harvard or a high-paying corporate job, he had done the unthinkable. He bet on himself. And now, it was time to prove that he had made the right choice. Ethan sat in the conference room of Walker Properties, staring at the thick stack of financial reports in front of him. Across the table, his parents sat completely relaxed, sipping tea, like this was just another ordinary day. "So," Ethan exhaled, flipping through the pages, "we own how many properties exactly?" His father shrugged. "A couple dozen apartment complexes, some office buildings, and a few commercial lots." His mother nodded. "Oh, and don't forget the parking structures downtown. Those bring in a nice profit." Ethan rubbed his temples. "So we've been millionaires this whole time, and you just let me believe we were struggling financially?" His dad took another sip of tea. "Yep," Ethan sighed. His parents had built a fortune in real estate, but they had always lived modestly, making sure he learned the value of hard work. But now that he was officially taking over, he saw the truth. Their business wasn't optimized at all. Most of their properties were being managed inefficiently. Rental income wasn't being maximized. And worst of all, they were sitting on untapped potential worth hundreds of millions. Ethan wasn't just going to maintain their empire. He was going to transform it. The first thing Ethan did was modernize everything. He introduced a new digital property management system, eliminating outdated paperwork and automating rent collection. He launched a mobile app for tenants, allowing them to pay rent, request maintenance, and communicate with management instantly. He upgraded security in all buildings, adding smart locks, surveillance systems, and biometric access for high-end tenants. Within months, complaints from tenants dropped by 80%. Vacancies filled faster. Late rent payments became non-existent. And the property values? They skyrocketed. What had once been a quiet, old-school business was now a cutting-edge real estate empire. Ethan's parents had always underestimated him, not because they didn't believe in his intelligence, but because they never thought he'd be interested in running the family business. So when his father walked into a board meeting and saw Ethan leading the discussion with industry experts, he nearly spilled his coffee. "Son, you actually know what you're doing?" his father muttered in disbelief. Ethan smirked. "Surprised?" His mother laughed. "I don't know whether to be proud or scared." In just 6 months, Ethan had doubled their monthly revenue, expanded their real estate portfolio, and turned Walker Properties into a dominant force in the industry. His parents had built the foundation, but Ethan was about to take it to the next level, and this was only the beginning. Ethan Walker had spent months expanding his real estate empire, but there was still unfinished business from his past. Hillsworth Academy, the institution that had robbed him of his rightful place at Harvard, was about to face a reckoning. And this time, Ethan wasn't just a former student seeking justice. He was a powerful figure with the influence to dismantle the system that had wronged him. Leveraging his extensive network of legal and financial experts, Ethan had compiled undeniable evidence of systemic corruption within Hillsworth Academy. Email leaks confirmed that Headmaster Richardson and senior administrators had engaged in a pay-for-admission scheme, ensuring that high-profile families received preferential treatment over merit-based students. Financial audits uncovered misappropriations of school funds, with tuition fees being redirected toward personal investments rather than educational development. Whistleblower testimonies from former faculty members detailed academic fraud, grade manipulation, and unethical practices that favored elite families over deserving students. With this overwhelming evidence, Ethan anonymously submitted the findings to both investigative journalists and regulatory authorities. Within days, the media erupted. Elite private school under investigation for corruption. Hillsworth Academy's admissions scandal, how money replaced merit. Headmaster Richardson faces allegations of academic fraud. The scandal quickly escalated, prompting an official state-level investigation into the school's administration. Hillsworth Academy was no longer a beacon of excellence. It was a national disgrace. As public outrage grew, major donors withdrew their funding, fearing association with the scandal. Parents of existing students demanded refunds, while prospective families revoked their applications. The Board of Education intervened, placing the school under strict regulatory review. And then the final blow came. The Harrington family, once untouchable, faced public scrutiny and legal consequences. Christopher Harrington, the student who had stolen Ethan's Harvard spot, was officially expelled from the university due to his fraudulent admission. His father, a key player in Hillsworth's corruption, was forced to resign from multiple corporate boards, facing lawsuits from disgruntled investors. Hillsworth Academy had been built on privilege and deception, and now it was crumbling under the weight of its own lies. With the former administration disgraced and removed, Hillsworth Academy was on the verge of permanent closure. But Ethan saw an opportunity. Rather than let the school fade into obscurity, he used his growing influence and financial resources to propose a complete restructuring of the institution. He orchestrated the appointment of a new board of directors, ensuring transparency and merit-based admissions policies. A scholarship program was established, funded by private investors and nonprofit organizations, to guarantee that no deserving student would ever be denied an opportunity due to financial status. By the time the reforms were enacted, Hillsworth Academy had transformed from an elite playground for the wealthy into a true institution of academic excellence. And at the center of it all was Ethan Walker, the student they had once discarded. Now the architect of their redemption, Ethan Walker thought he had figured everything out. He had spent months expanding Walker Properties, turning it into a modern real estate empire. He had destroyed Hillsworth Academy, reshaping it into something better. He had built his own path, proving he didn't need Harvard or corporate giants to succeed. But what he didn't know was that his family's fortune was far greater than he had ever imagined. And the truth was about to change everything. It started with a phone call from an unknown number. "Mr. Walker, this is Edward Langston, Senior Advisor for the Walker Family Trust. Your father asked me to arrange a meeting." Ethan frowned. "Walker Family Trust? I handle all of our real estate holdings." A pause. Then, "No, sir. You only manage a fraction of the assets. The full portfolio is much larger." Ethan felt his pulse quicken. Larger? How much larger? He agreed to the meeting, and the next day, he found himself sitting in a high-rise office in downtown Manhattan, staring at a massive screen displaying a list of properties under the Walker name. His heart nearly stopped, because this wasn't just a handful of apartment buildings. This was an empire. Luxury skyscrapers in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, shopping malls, office buildings, and high-end residential complexes across the country, private islands, and international real estate holdings. His family wasn't just wealthy, they were billionaires. Ethan was still trying to process the numbers when his parents walked in. His father sat across from him, sipping coffee like this was just another casual morning conversation. "You okay, son?" he asked. Ethan stared at him. You knew about all this? About how massive our holdings are?" His mother nodded. "Of course." "Then why the hell did I think we were barely middle class growing up?" Ethan demanded. His father set his coffee down. "Because we wanted you to learn the value of hard work," he said simply. "We built this from the ground up, Ethan. It wasn't handed to us, and we weren't going to let it be handed to you either." His mother nodded. "If we told you from the start that you were inheriting billions, would you have worked as hard as you did?" Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it. Because deep down, he knew the answer. Probably not. They had forced him to grow up without privilege, to struggle, to fight for his own success. And because of that, he had become his own man, not just some entitled rich kid riding on his parents' money. For the first time, he saw it clearly. They hadn't hidden the truth to control him. They had done it to prepare him. Ethan leaned back, exhaling. "So what happens now?" His father smiled. "That's up to you. The Walker Family Trust is yours to control, if you want it. But after everything you've built on your own, I think you already know what you're capable of." Ethan looked at the screen again, at the billion-dollar empire that could be his. This wasn't just about money. It was about legacy. It was about control, and he was ready to take it all. Ethan Walker had spent years fighting to prove himself, fighting to take back what was stolen from him, fighting to rise above the people who had once looked down on him. Now, he no longer had to fight, because he had already won. The moment Ethan's name became synonymous with success, the vultures began circling. Former classmates who had mocked him at Hillsworth Academy suddenly wanted to reconnect. Business elites who had dismissed him as a nobody now offered him partnerships. Even distant relatives who had barely spoken to him growing up now acted like they had always believed in him. "Ethan, buddy, we go way back." "Mr. Walker, I always knew you'd be great. Remember me?" "We should grab dinner sometime, catch up." Ethan didn't bother responding. He had no interest in people who only showed up when it was convenient for them. The Ethan Walker they had ignored no longer existed, and the Ethan Walker standing before them? He had better things to do. Ethan had never cared about luxury for the sake of luxury. So when he officially took control of the Walker Family Trust, the first thing he did was sell off a portion of their assets. He liquidated non-essential properties, high-end vacation homes, excess office spaces, and unproductive assets. He redirected the capital into something that actually mattered: education. He founded the Walker Initiative, a scholarship fund designed to help brilliant but underprivileged students, kids like him who had been cheated by a broken system. The program wasn't just about funding tuition. It was about dismantling the barriers that kept hardworking students from success. full financial aid, mentorship programs, direct job placements with top firms. Ethan wasn't just donating money. He was building a path for students like him to never go through what he had suffered. When the press got wind of Ethan's initiative, they exploded with praise. Young real estate mogul uses wealth to reshape education. Ethan Walker, the billionaire who remembers where he came from. From rejected student to educational philanthropist, a full circle moment. Everyone expected him to build the biggest empire, chase the highest profits. Instead, he built something greater, something that would outlast any real estate fortune, because wealth wasn't the goal anymore. Making a difference was. One evening, Ethan stood outside Hillsworth Academy, the place where his struggle had begun. But this time, he wasn't there to prove anything. He wasn't there to seek revenge. He was just saying goodbye. He had won. And now it was time to move forward, without anger, without regret, without looking back. With a small smile, Ethan turned and walked away, leaving his past behind forever. Ethan Walker stood on the rooftop of Walker Tower, one of the tallest buildings in the city. The skyline stretched endlessly before him, a city that had once ignored him, now shaped by his influence. The wind was cold, crisp, but for the first time in years, he felt nothing but warmth. Because this was his world now. Ethan thought back to where it all began. He had once been just a kid on a delivery bike, balancing takeout orders while dreaming of Harvard. He had been cast aside, his future stolen by people who thought they could decide his worth. And yet, here he was. Not as a student, not as a victim, not as someone seeking approval, but as a man who had built his own future. He was no longer the boy who had been told he wasn't good enough. He was no longer just the heir to a fortune he hadn't known existed. He had become something greater. A self-made powerhouse. The world knew Ethan Walker as a real estate mogul, a billionaire, a force to be reckoned with. But the truth? He was still the same kid who had once fought for his place in the world. The difference was, now the world knew his name, and they would never forget it. With one last glance at the city below, Ethan exhaled, feeling the weight of his past finally lift. He had nothing left to prove, no battles left to fight. For the first time, his future was completely his to define. With a quiet smile, he turned away from the edge and walked forward into his new beginning. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content.